Hey Doug, what's going on?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really, really well. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And here we are live, Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday the 22nd.
I
Uh,
thought it was the 21st, but that's okay.
yeah,
I
the
could be
20, the
wrong.
22nd of September,
Okay.
and it is cold. And it's
Yeah.
not cold, but it's kind of
Well, I don't know whether fall is here.
fall is here.
Autumn is here, and the interesting thing that our viewers can't see is we both showed up with pants on today versus shorts.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting how one week we're in shorts, and the next week we're dressed
That's right.
completely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's been going on, Doug? I'm just preparing to make sure we're sharing and we're actually on
Are
on
we?
live.
Are
We're
we
actually
live?
on live and we're there.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make sure we were hooked up. And I wanted to share this. Listen, guys, if you are checking us out, share this with your friends. I think this is a good podcast to share with people, especially for
It
me.
is.
This is a midweek faith lift, and it's about being inspired during the week.
Yeah, and not only that, it's unscripted, and this is an opportunity. If you have a question or something you want to contribute, feel free to do that. And how would a person enter into this? I mean, they can send you a text message that you'll see, right?
Well, yeah, definitely. They can send us if they're looking at us live, they can actually just share a message with us, comment,
Okay.
and I'll look at that comment here on the screen, and
Okay.
and then I can read that comment out loud, and we can answer any questions we need to answer. So feel free to comment, and also share this with your family, with your friends. Let people know that we're here every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and we're talking about spiritual stuff, positive stuff.
Excellent.
We're not
yeah.
talking about junk. We're talking about positive stuff.
Right.
Stuff that changes lives, man.
That's well, that's what Unity of Chattanooga is all about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Unity movement is all about. Is how do we use the spiritual laws, the psychological
Mm-hmm.
laws, the obviously the laws in which we live, to make a greater life for ourselves. How do we do that? And some of it's pretty straightforward. Some of it we need to talk about a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. And I definitely use those laws myself. I'm a new member of Unity.
Yeah.
What's considered new? Like, what do you consider new? Like,
Well,
I mean, I've been around 5 years. Am I seasoned yet?
I think you've been around long enough.
Yeah,
You know?
you think so? Okay.
Yeah, well, sure. You know some of the terms.
Okay,
You know.
okay.
And and more important, you've got basically the idea of how to change your life for the better.
For the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is huge
Yeah.
because some people never even get there.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah.
For example, we were talking about the beads you're wearing.
Yeah, the beads. Yeah.
Those are new today.
Yes, these are definitely new.
So tell us about the beads.
Well, I found them. I bought these beads probably about, I would say about maybe 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
I bought them at a street fair.
Okay.
I knew they were beads. I knew they were something spiritual. I didn't
Yeah.
know exactly what they were for, but I
Right.
just was attracted to them, and I bought them, and I never used them, put them in the drawer. And a couple days ago, I was cleaning out a drawer, and I saw the beads, and I said, you know what? I'm going to find out what these beads are for.
Cool.
And I went online, and I looked it up, and
And it's got something on the end there.
yeah. I haven't quite found out what that is.
Okay.
But these are definitely like Buddhist
Let's see what
monk
that is.
beads.
Okay.
They're actually 108 beads, and you can use them to kind of like say affirmations or
Sure.
chants or anything. I use them for affirmations, just to say something positive to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm able to keep count of how many times I say that affirmation because there are 108 beads.
Yeah.
So I've been.
So you've been using them.
I've been using them. I've been saying affirmations for the last 2 days, and
Excellent.
to be honest, I've noticed a difference already.
That's great.
Yeah, I noticed a difference. Yeah.
And I was, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I noticed the similarity to rosary beads that Roman Catholics use. I had a set of beads very similar to that, a long time ago. So, yeah.
And what do they use theirs for, though?
Same thing. If you you weren't raised Roman Catholic.
No.
Okay. Well, neither was I, but I had a lot of friends that were. Okay. And what I see them do is they would be saying prayers, wrote prayers, and they'd be using the beads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And you can
same
actually
thing.
keep track of the of what I'm the affirmations. So, you say 108 affirmations, it's got to stay. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
sometimes I'm doing like 300. Throughout the course of the day, I grab this quite a few times. I either keep it around my neck, or
Yeah.
I wear it I read that the monks wear it on their wrist,
Oh,
on their
really?
right wrist, and so I started wearing it on my right wrist.
Oh,
And I actually wear it when I walk the dogs.
okay.
And I'll just take it off and walk the dogs and just say
Cool.
little affirmations, and yeah.
Cool.
So I notice a big difference. So
Well,
it's
that's
part of
good.
the spiritual practice. Anything to stay,
Anything.
anything
Yeah,
to keep us positive.
that's right.
Yeah, keep us
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah,
So-
and I think one of the biggest things is not to make is, I mean, we can use rote prayers, but the idea sometimes rote prayers just there's nothing wrong with a rote prayer in terms of automatic, but sometimes it kind of sets into the background
Yeah.
and you're thinking about something else, and you know you may be saying the prayers and it kind of loses its effect.
Power? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
its effect.
Yeah.
But anything
Yeah,
you know along
yeah.
those lines is good.
That reminds
Yeah.
me of, like, I have like affirmations around the house that I tape up, and they've been there so long,
That
and so
you
I don't see them
'em.
anymore.
You don't see them
And so it's
anymore.
like, it's time to take these down and reposition them, or retype something else out and put it in a different location.
Yeah.
So that I can that
Yeah.
that spiritual eye can catch on to it. So yeah.
But even if they're there,
Mhm.
you know, and they almost fade into the background. Remember we were talking about visualization boards.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
the other. I mean, to have your house filled with those types of things.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a
yeah,
great thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
What have you been doing during? I mean, have you been doing anything, or you've been?
Well-
I mean, we've had a lot of rain, so I don't know if you've been.
Well, another motorcycle story. You know, my Hogg brothers were going to go do the Tail of the Dragon on the weekend, so off we go. And we knew there was rain in the forecast, and we got up to Robbinsville, and had lunch. And then after lunch, all the way across the Skyway and all the way back, it
Wow.
was pouring. So that on a motorcycle is a little bit dicey.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but-
She got wet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and slept all the next day. So,
Wow.
so anyways, you know, one thing I wanted to just mention this morning, I was going over Christy Snow's talk over the weekend.
Yeah. Christy Snow was with us last week.
Yeah,
Last week Sunday.
and you know, great presentation, of course, and her talk was entitled "Faith-Filled and Spirit-Led," and I'd just like to talk a little bit about something that she said. She opened it up and said, "Wherever love is leading me, I will go."
Wow.
Now, another way of talking about love is perhaps a feeling. Now, love is much more than a feeling, but if we say if we're tuned into our feelings, and then we take a look at some of the Hawkins work in terms of scale of consciousness, another way of looking at that and looking at love and looking at feelings is to say, what makes you go positive? What makes you go weak?
Right.
Okay. So she used this example. She said, often we imagine a scenario we're going to walk into when we enter a room, and we are not imagining the smile that we're dreaming of. Instead, we're imaging the boss or imagining the boss that is going to be critical, or the family member that's going to be confrontational or upsetting. What if we use that power of imagination for good? Okay, so we have several things going on here. We have faith, which is a power, which is a projection. We have love. We have our idea of whether we're positive, or strength or weakness. You know, we have all those things going on. And what I thought I would do is just mention a personal story that I had that brings some of those into focus. Many years ago, I was running a manufacturing plant out in California. And basically what I did is I'd been with this company for a while, and I would go into the manufacturing plants that were in trouble. So this particular one was kind of the butt joke of the company. You know, nothing was going right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They send the big guns in.
So I was there to try to turn it around, and one of the things that we needed was pretty much a vast influx of capital, because the equipment that we were using was out of the 40s and 50s,
Right.
and it was a bootstrap organization that the founder had created with his own works, and not having a lot of money, he cut corners where he could. He did whatever he could. The business became successful, but when you compared that business with state of the art, there's a huge gap.
Of course.
So
of course.
we're looking for. So, anyways, one of the things that we were going to do, and this was back in the '90s, technology was just getting going, and our parent corporation was in the Midwest in St. Louis. So the day came when the CEO of the parent corporation and all his VPs and the CEO of our company and all their VPs, they're on the other end of the camera, and there I am in California looking at a camera going to make a presentation about our that little business. And I knew that they didn't want to spend any money on it.
Wow.
I knew that ahead of time. And I had been prepared and rehearsed so that, this is what you're going to say, this is how you're going to say it, this is the, feeling we want you to put in it, and rehearsed, and I was bumming. I was hating it.
Wow.
And we had about 5 minutes to go, and I'm sitting there, kind of like I'm sitting here with you, and looking at the camera, and I'm just, this dialogue begins in my head. And the dialogue was, and there's some techies out there, still doing some stuff, okay? And I'm in our conference room, our boardroom, and I'm sitting there, and I'm drumming my fingers on the table a little bit, and I said, I don't want it to be this way.
Right.
Little voice says, what do you want it to be? Okay, change the focus, all right? So I said, well, now I'm talking to myself, all right? I said, well, what I want it positive. I want it to be a fun-filled sort of thing. I want to get the message across and get it across in such a way that we can get the funding so that we can go forward and that sort of thing. Little voice says, well, you know what to do.
Wow.
And I banged my fist on the table and said, yes, I do. And all the techies look at me like, Doug, you've lost it. Man. What's going on? We got 3 minutes to go. So I got up, in the conference room and my office were right next to each other. So I got up, walked out of the room, walked into my office, and I'd been in Unity 5 years, maybe a little bit more. Okay, but I knew
you had some information.
I knew what positive prayer was,
Right.
and I knew the power of it. So I walked into my office. It just closed the door and stood there right behind the door and just took a deep breath and did a positive prayer. And I said, thank you, God, for being right here and making this a positive experience so that, that sort of thing, and filling me with the right words and the right, tones and things so that comes across. And, basically said, Amen, opened the door, walked into the conference room, and the techies are going crazy because they're going 3, 2, 1, and I sit down.
Right.
So at that point, I started into the presentation, and there was a slideshow on the other end, and I could see what pictures they were showing to the major corporation. Now you got to remember, here's a board table,
Right.
All right, CEO of the parent corporation. I mean, this guy's God, and all the vice presidents, his VPs,
Right.
and they're gonna react to what he says, and then all of our guys, and they're gonna react, that sort of thing. So the tension at least for me, was pretty high.
Of course.
So I start going through my routine and talking about the slides as the slides come up, and everything was following along the script, and honestly, Shannon, I don't exactly remember when I went
The
off
Spirit
script.
took over. The Holy Ghost.
But
they call it in African.
Here's where I think it went off. So one of the things that we had, we made large electrical metal enclosures. Big metal boxes, basically, is what we made. You put electrical stuff in. And state of the art is a powder coating technique or electrodeposition or something like that that's very sophisticated, very expensive. We didn't have any of that. What we had was basically a blowtorch that would we'd clean it with power washers, okay, and then we would use this torch to heat it up and evaporate the water. And I think
Old technology, old way of doing it.
yeah. So we showed that picture on the screen, and I think what I said was, and here we are with World War II flamethrower technology,
Wow. You were really,
which was way off the script, right?
Yeah.
Well,
you took a risk even in saying that. I mean,
it just came out.
Yeah.
You know, it just came out.
Wow.
Well, the CEO of the parent corporation burst out laughing. He just roared with laughter. All his VPs started laughing. The tension was broke. And then I could see them on another monitor. And at that point, one of his VPs reached for something on the table. There was all kinds of stuff you could eat, snacks and water and stuff. And he knocked over a water pitcher. The water went over. And everybody started laughing.
Right.
I mean, and after that, you could throw the script out.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
You could throw the script out, and they started just asking questions and popcorning all over the place. And we started laughing and joking about this stuff. And then at the end, the CEO basically looked at me and said, "So, Doug, what do you need to turn this around?"
Wow.
In which case, I knew exactly what I wanted to say. It wasn't scripted, but I said, "Well, this is what I'd like to do." And he says, "Well, you got it.
You got it. Yeah.
Not a problem." And so, the interview ends. We go off camera, and I'm thinking, man, I wonder what just happened.
Wow.
And I immediately got calls from the president of our company, and basically what he said is, "Great job. That was fabulous.
Wow.
It wasn't exactly the way we'd planned it, but
it
it was
out.
effective,
Yeah.
and it was great. You did a great job." And I got 2 or 3 other calls from some of our VPs and said that. The key thing, and that I want to talk to the viewers about, is something that Christy Snow said. If we imagine the scenario that we're going to walk into, we're not imagining the smile or imagining the boss, saying positive things. And when we talk about Hawkins' work, the kinesiology, whether you're strong or weak, the key thing here is to recognize where you are at. And if you're weak,
That's right.
if you're imaging, the worst,
Turn that around.
you got to turn that around.
You gotta turn that around.
And one of the ways to do that, there are several, but one of the ways to do that, and the way that I did it at the time, with not much more knowledge, I mean, I'd been in Unity 5-6 years, maybe something like that, is affirmative prayer. Those are all the things that we talk about every Sunday, and that we talk about in these podcasts. And if you use those techniques, starting with being aware of where your feelings are at, where's your imaging at, what are you thinking about?
Is that called projection? I'm not sure if you've ever heard
Well,
of it. It's like whatever you're thinking.
Projection is a psychological term, and basically what that means is that you're projecting your stuff onto somebody else. Okay. For example, let's say you're not feeling very good. So you blame it on somebody else.
Okay.
You come home, you've had a hard day, and you kick the dog. Okay, that's projection.
Right. Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
you're taking what's inside of you and projecting it on something else.
Definitely having a negative outlook or negative feelings or thoughts about a situation before it happens. So you're saying basically, that take notice that you're feeling that, or you're thinking that. And begin to do something to change that, so that when you get into the situation, it's not, you don't create what you're thinking.
Yeah,
the first, the initial stuff that you're thinking.
Yeah, and one of the things that Christy Snow talked about is she termed it faith. Okay, but and I know, and if you're watching this podcast, you've had the same experience. When something's going to go right.
Yeah.
Or you feel when something's going to go wrong. Okay, I mean, I've been
You
shooting.
know that before it even happens. Yeah, you got that feeling.
That's the
You don't
faith.
know it, but you have the feeling.
That's
Yeah,
the faith.
yeah,
Okay, and so what affirmative prayer does is it turns that around. So, and
yeah. Take control of it. Of the
well, what happens is you turn that faith around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you turn it in a positive direction. And when I said that prayer in my office,
Mm-hmm.
and and I basically said thank
Mm-hmm.
you God for being with me and helping me with the right words and that sort of thing. I felt that shift,
Mm-hmm.
and when I walked into that conference room, I was positive and I was enthusiastic because I knew it was going to go right, and that's that faith-filled thing. Now, there's another side to this. Okay, I had a boss, and this was another thing that Christy said. She talked about Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. Okay, and I think we've all had those experiences where we're walking into something and say, oh man, this is
It's going to be a bad situation.
now if you're in an operations or even a sales position or something like that, you're going to go in and you're going to anticipate some of the things, some of the objections you might hear, some of the things that might go wrong. I had a boss one time who was ex-military, ex-airborne Rangers, and he was about 6'2" and a pretty impressive, George Patton type. And he always had a saying, and that was, as you're preparing for something, primary, secondary, tertiary. You've been in the military, you've had a military background, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the idea here is, as you're thinking about something, you can realize, okay, here's some objections, here's some things that go. Prepare for those.
Right.
Now, once you've made preparations, okay, and said, all right, this is the way we think it could go. Don't dwell on that. Don't dwell on what's going wrong. Dwell on what you want to see.
Right. Yeah.
You want to see it go right, and just simply know that you've taken the proper steps. I'll give you an example. If you're going to go on a hike, and you've heard that there are snakes in the area, okay, and you're a little bit nervous about snakes. So if you're nervous about snakes and you constantly been thinking about it, and here comes the fear, and you dwell in the fear, guess what's going to happen?
They're going to show up.
You're darn right they're
Yeah.
going to show up, okay?
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, you say, well, there's snakes out there, so I think I'll put a little snake bite kit in my backpack or my pocket or something like that. And hey, I'm going to have a great time.
Yeah. There's been many times in my sobriety where I wanted to change things around.
Yeah.
And I would walk into a family situation. Before I got there, I'm like, oh my God, I know what this is going to be. This is going to be a situation where I'm going to feel uncomfortable, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and I
Right.
would anticipate the worst.
Yeah.
And I would call what we call a sponsor on the phone before because they say when you're feeling uncomfortable, call people that have a little bit more experience than you
Sure.
do on how to deal with that situation. Now, nothing's happening; it's all in my mind. But I've experienced this before.
Right.
And I'd call the sponsor on the phone. He says, "Listen, get rid of those thoughts. Have a different way of looking at it, like you're talking about."
Right.
And so I'll say the Serenity Prayer. I'm not sure if you're familiar
Yeah,
with the
I'm
Serenity
familiar
Prayer.
with it. Yeah.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, with no difference.
Yeah.
And I'll knock on the door, and I will go in, and I'll make sure that I don't allow myself to get into that, and nothing will go the way I thought it would go. And it would go that way usually. It used to go that way usually, but I was never. I didn't take control of what
Right.
my feelings were to
Yeah.
make it different. Like what you're talking about. So this is about taking personal responsibility. Know what you're feeling, going into a situation and not projecting, but making it different when you get in there, as
Yeah.
opposed to keeping those thoughts, because thoughts turn into actions. Period. That's what we're talking about, right?
That's right.
Thoughts turn
That's
into
right.
actions. So
That's right.
yeah, this is great stuff, man.
Yeah, it is. She said something else. She used a condo example in her talk, and basically it's very similar to what I talked about. This guy called her up and was just in a panic and said, "We got to pray right now." And she said, "What for?" And she said, "Well, I'm selling my condo, and we've got an open house, and only one person has showed up."
Right.
And Christy basically said, "Well, how many people does it take to sell your
Houses.
condo? One.
One person, right? Yeah.
Okay, so they
Right.
did a prayer, and immediately after the prayer, the buyer walks in, and it was taken care of.
Right.
And it's all about turning that stuff around. You
Yeah.
realize what could go wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing
Nothing
wrong
wrong
with
with-
that.
yeah.
Okay, but
But
then
we don't
you-
want to stay there.
No,
You don't wanna
no,
stay
you
there.
take the right
Yeah,
steps.
take the
You
right
know,
step. We are responsible, man. We're responsible for our happiness.
Absolutely.
We're responsible for. We can't wait for anything to, for things to happen for it to.
Here's something else she said too, which I kind of like. She said, when I first got out of college, I started playing music full time, and I loved it and had a great time. Then I stopped writing those tears in the beer songs, and I started writing songs about humanity and what we can do for one another. The next thing you know, I was no longer a good fit for the same bars and rough houses
Wow.
that I'd been playing in. You know, and that's exactly what happens. You know, once we start becoming aware of where our energy level is,
start
what
to-
makes us go strong, what is it that we love, and we start taking positive steps in that direction, everything changes.
You know, I have a friend.
Everything
Real quick,
changes.
we're going to end in a few minutes. I have
Okay.
a friend who, her name is Heidi,
Okay.
and she's actually watched our podcast.
Okay.
And watched you and I, and she's also watched the Motlow
Okay.
podcast, and she
Sure.
decided to apply for a job here. Take a leap of faith. She's never been outside of Brooklyn. Well, she's been outside. She's been to a couple places, but she wants to move here. you
Oh,
know,
great.
and she said, you know what, I'm going to apply for a job and do it. And she applied for a job, and she got the job. A couple days ago, they called her, and she called a couple today for an apartment. She got an apartment.
Yeah.
And she's moving here, and
Great.
all because of, you know, this taking a leap of faith, stepping out, and also who you hang out with.
Oh,
She hangs out with me. I hang out with you. This stuff is contagious.
absolutely.
It's contagious.
Absolutely.
So, you know, our lives get-
How many times? I mean, I sound like a broken record sometimes, but it's really important. Be careful who you hang out with.
I've been hanging out with you, man. I'm like reading everything, and but I think our life. Okay, we're back. Yeah, hanging out with you. I've just been reading everything, and yeah, it's contagious. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. You're not doing anything on purpose.
So when are you going to get a motorcycle?
Oh, no. But it's true. It changes everything. Everything
does.
shifts. Not
It
just
does.
not just we shift as a person, but people in our lives begin to shift. Our interests shift.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
We can end up in a totally different, state, world.
I was talking with a minister friend who was also a former psychologist and family counselor. And basically, he said we were talking about the power of prayer, affirmative prayer, and that sort of thing. And he said all it takes is one person in a household that
That's right.
has a positive prayer practice and that sort of thing, and it will change the family dynamic. You know,
Change generations. I mean, that's what
It will.
Alcoholics Anonymous does that. When one person gets clean in the house, if a husband, decides to get clean, I mean, he's going to change generations, grandchildren, all that.
Yeah.
All those people are
well,
going to benefit.
even
from
in the
that.
Bible, it said sins of the father to the seventh generation. Okay, the love of the father, it goes forward.
Yeah.
When we were talking about Hawkins' work and we were doing the calibrations, I don't remember the exact number, but one person at a level 600
That's right.
would
Yeah.
had more influence than like 70 million.
Yeah.
And I could have the numbers wrong, okay, but 70 million people. And if you take a look at
That energy that they're vibrating is such a high energy. You're right.
take a
I mean, Martin Luther King was able to move the masses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're vibrating at high.
Absolutely.
I have a neighbor, and I don't know if I should say. I mean, I just have a neighbor that she was a neighbor from hell, and I just started just doing what I'm supposed to do, what I've been practicing at Unity, what Unity's taught me. Just
Yeah.
kind of being a nice person, sweeping in front of the yard, doing things like that. And I tell you. She's the best neighbor. She brings
Really?
food for me. She brings food to the dog.
Turn
But it
it
wasn't like
around.
that in the beginning.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. And if you're watching, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. But you weren't like that in the beginning.
There we go.
So we can. Our energy just vibrates.
Yeah, it goes forward.
Yeah.
And, the more love, the more positive, the greater the effect.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
We're out of time again.
Yeah, we're out of time. I love you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hey, remember, you can catch us here every Wednesday around 4 o'clock on Unity of Chattanooga's Facebook page. And we also have, real quick, we have a outdoor service next Sunday.
Yeah, this coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday, we have
in person.
In person. So we're going to be together in Tennessee at Tennessee River Park,
Number 2.
Pavilion number 2.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, I have a picture here. Her name is
Deb Moore.
Deb Moore. She's going to be here.
Yeah. First time with us.
Yep.
English college professor. Currently studying to be an interfaith minister. You know.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say.
Yeah.
What is her talk about? Her talk is about who we are, really. I'm interested to know who we are, really. Yeah. So she's going to be here at Tennessee River Park, Pavilion number 2, this Sunday. Come check us out if you're in Tennessee. We'd love to meet you, have you out, you know.
And the weather's supposed to be fabulous.
Yeah. And dress accordingly.
Yeah.
Weather's changing. We love you guys. Thank you so much for viewing. And we'll see you next week.
Have a great day.
Bye.